Hey guys, thanks for stopping by. Today's video is a little bit off topic, but it's something that comes up all the time. I figured I'd just shoot a quick video in order to help as many people as possible. We're gonna do this in two ways. Today, I'm gonna talk about just photography and the concept in general and using post-processing software. And then I'm gonna dive right into Lightroom, which is the application we use, and I'm gonna show you 12 steps that I use to process all of our photos. Once you do that, I think you'll agree your photos will go from here to way off the charts, and then you can refine and increase your skill from there. Okay, when we used to shoot with film, we would use a dark room and we would process with different chemicals and different paper to get a different look. Now, with digital photography, we use a program called Lightroom. There are other options out there, but if you don't have an application already that is your favorite, I would recommend Lightroom because it allows you to do so much. I don't consider myself a professional photographer, but I know a few things, and I know that just with a few steps, you can bring your photos, like I said, from here to way up here, and that's what we're gonna do today. You don't have to have an expensive camera in order to take an awesome photo. It's more about composition and the lighting and the subject that you're shooting. But if you're gonna do this professionally or you're very passionate about this and you can do it, get yourself a better camera because you'll have a larger image and you'll have more information to edit in post. I happen to use the Canon 5D Mark IV. It's a fantastic camera for me. I've shot Canon all my life, so I use that camera, but Nikon and Sony have some great options out there as well. Once you settle on a camera, work with some interesting lenses. There's a couple I like. One, I shoot with a very inexpensive lens called it's the Canon Nifty 50. It's a 50mm prime lens, and it allows for great depth of field. You can have me in focus, and you can have the background out of focus. That separates your subject from the environment, and it gives your photos a professional look. The lens that I'm shooting with right now is a Minolta. It's a Rocore lens, and it was built in the 1970s. It was inexpensive. I got it off of eBay for about 60 bucks, and I have the Minolta mounted to my Canon with an adapter. Why? Because it was built in the 1970s. When I put that lens on my camera, it has the look of lenses from that era and some of my favorite movies. Once you have your camera and your lens and your post-processing software selected, it's time to dive in and do your post-processing or your developing of the photos. Most photographers post-process their images. As they develop their skill and their look, they'll even come up with their own, what's called a LUT, L-U-T. That stands for lookup table or color lookup table. You can work up to that point if you really enjoy this. If you're at the beginning, this is a great video for you. Let's stop talking, jump right into Lightroom, and I'll show you exactly what we do. All right, so let's jump right in. We're gonna open up this program called Lightroom. I'll give you details in the description below. Okay, so you have to start with an epic photo. So I imported this photo. This is flat. I've done nothing with it. It was shot in RAW with a flat color profile. So this is just as the camera took the image, it's imported right into Adobe Lightroom, and because it's that raw format, I can push and pull the exposure and do a lot with it because there's a lot of color information. So now let's just take a look. You can see it's all washed out on the side here, and there's some details that aren't showing up, and we're going to manipulate the photo to capture the feel that was there in the environment when we took the shot. Watch the driver's side, or the passenger side here. I'm going to bring the highlights all the way down. You see how that detail came out? The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my shadows all the way up. This is the first thing I do with every photo. It shows as much information in the photo as possible. You can see it now looks even more flat, but that's the first thing I do to see what I'm working with. Now the next thing is the whites slider. I'm gonna hold down the Alt key and move this whites slider, but see what happens when I hold down Alt and click on the white slider. I see nothing but black. Because this is adjusting whites, you want to have some white in your photo, and we just want a little speck of white because you don't want a lot washed out. Now we've got a little speck of white. we're going to do the same thing with the blacks. I've got no black in my photo now. I'm going to bring it all the way until I see about that much black. I see more black than white because I want my shadows to be nice and deep. And you'll see as soon as I look at the photo again, it made a big difference. Boom. All right, just to show the difference there real quick. There you go. Before, after, before, after. It's already looking really good. All right, let's continue. Look at the tone curve. This is basically your lightness in the scene. You can adjust these separately, red, green, and blue, but right now all we're gonna do is we're gonna push our highlights up and we're gonna pull our shadows down, and that gives you more contrast in the photo. I'm gonna scroll back up here. I don't like how much the shadows are pushed. I'm gonna bring that down so we have a little bit more darkness around the rig. There we go. And then the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to learn right now about teal and orange. Hollywood is enamored with teal shadows and orange highlights. You see it everywhere, and it gives you a quote-unquote cinematic look. So if you want to duplicate sort of a Hollywood cinematic look, what you're going to do is you're going to click this swatch in the highlights. You're going to give your highlights a little bit of orange. See, now this would be too extreme, but you're going to give it a little bit of orange, and then you're going to go to your shadows and you're going to give it a little bit of teal. Boom. This is gonna drive colorists nuts. People who do this for a living, they're going to say, no, don't do the teal and orange thing, because it's so typical of Hollywood. But hey, if you want something to look quote-unquote cinematic, give her the old teal and orange treatment. All right, now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm really going to adjust my cropping. I'm going to adjust my cropping before I do a vignette. So the vignette is around the edge. And I like this sun. But in order for a composition to look interesting, you want to have the focal points at thirds. So you see the truck is sort of at this third. The mountains are at this upper third. This group of rocks are along this third. So you want to divide things up into thirds as much as possible, and that gives your photo an interesting composition. Let's crop it there. Bam! And then we're going to scroll down here. We're going to pull in a little bit of vignette. See, now this would be too much. I just want a little bit of vignette around the edge. And giving it a little vignette around the edge pulls your attention into the subject matter, which is right there at the center of the photo. All right, we're getting very close to being done. I'm going to do a few quick adjustments. One, I think I have too much contrast. So I'm going to bring the blacks up a bit. There we go. I like my little bit of teal there. I actually like this flare here because I've got the sun there and people can see that it's really bright. But before we call this good, I still think the side of the rig is too overexposed. So now we're going to learn about the brush tool. I'm going to click the brush tool, and then here, all these sliders I can adjust and then apply with a brush. So I'm going to bring down the exposure and then watch what happens on the side of that rig. Okay, I've got my brush over the side of the rig, and you're going to see wherever my brush goes, the exposure is less. And then once I've painted, I can manipulate the sliders to bring the exposure down even further. See that? Boom! See all that detail? Again, if I wasn't shooting raw, I wouldn't be able to pull all that detail out. But that looks pretty darn good. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to create another brush. I'm going to bring the exposure up. And then down here where it's a little dark, where this tire is a little dark, I'm going to bring it out a little bit because I want to see the tread on those Cam3s. So that's too much. That's okay. We'll keep it there. Before we call it quits, you see the yellow in this rock? Okay, let me show you how we're going to bring out the color of that rock. Over here, we're going to select yellow. And we're going to shift yellow towards red. That will make those rocks orange. And then we're going to increase the saturation of those rocks. Boom, like that. Now you've got orange in the scene contrasting the blue. Let's experiment with the blue. The blue is the sky and the mountains. You can see that. So let's push that just as an example. All right, see, that's extreme. But if you want to, you can bring the blue up just a little bit. And now my vignette around the edge is too much. All right, we could do this all night. I'm not going to, but I'm going to show you one last thing. Watch what you can do just by adjusting a few sliders. Let's crank up the clarity and decrease the saturation to give us the grunge look. Boom. Clarity. Boom. Saturation down. Now you have a grungy feel. You still see the color, you still see the blues and the oranges, but you have a much more harsh looking scene. Click that. Click that, we'll bring it back. I actually like the decreased saturation just a little bit. I like the way that looked. So I'm going to keep that right there, and that's it. All right, you guys, I hope this was useful. I look forward to seeing all the awesome photos out there. I've got some details in the description below. If you like the tutorial, you think you like this channel, go ahead and subscribe. That helps us out. And Overland Bound is a worldwide organization of vehicle-dependent travelers here to support you. If you're feeling adventurous, you don't get outside enough, consider checking us out. Go over to the website and see what we're all about. That's it. I'll see you next time.